It was a movie that I was personally anticipating a lot, and even while I was watching it, I was still trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. I thought it actually raised some pretty interesting questions, but as it got further and further away from giving any sort of coherent answers or arguments in defense of the points it was trying to make, I just couldn't defend it anymore. That movie, it became my own personal Palpatine, and I was Anakin Skywalker. I was letting the hate flow through me, and it drove me insane. And you know what? I was gonna take the fall. I was gonna go out and slaughter some younglings. I was gonna go and get myself a nice, good, hot lava bath, and I was willing to become Big Cyclone because that thing made me fall to the dark side. That thing drove me insane. And if I was telling this to your face right now, yeah, that wasn't even planned. I guess it just goes to show you how much I despise that movie. But if I was telling this to you right now, I don't think I'd have even gotten that far. Because what would have happened is that you would have stopped me and we would have gotten into a conversation. Now, you might either have agreed with me, we might have gone on a roll about how much that movie completely sucked, or you might have decided that I have completely terrible taste in movies. Yeah, frankly, I kind of do. And beat me on every single point I was making. But you know what? We'd have been in a conversation. And that really is what makes a good conversational hook. When it comes to getting people hooked onto a conversation, I think there's a tendency to get a little bit too caught up on what the topic of the conversation is. I tend to hear it a lot. A lot of people say, they're not going to be interested in what I'm saying. Oh no, that thing I like talking about, that's not going to draw anybody in. But really, I think it's less about what you're talking about than how you're reacting to what you're talking about. Think of it this way: you're engaged in a polite conversation with somebody. It's a very smooth, easy conversation. Nobody's really going crazy over anything. And since nobody's really going crazy over anything, that sort of implies that there really isn't any excitement to be had. There really isn't any incentive to make something big of the conversation, and therefore there really isn't any incentive to pay that much attention to it. But when you do get excited about something, whether it's in a positive or a negative way, then you're bringing attention to it. Then you're outright saying that this conversation is important. There is something about what is being said here that should draw you in. So back when I was still in college, I actually had this one friend. And at that time, I was a major fan of comic books. I still am now, honestly. But at that time, I was so into it, but I never really shared that part of myself with a lot of people because, well, I just didn't think that many people were into what I was into. But the thing is, with this friend of mine, I actually got to a stage where I was comfortable enough to share my interests with her. And the thing is, I remember being so passionate about how much I loved certain books, how much I disliked certain books, and just basically what kind of characters and stories really drove me emotionally. But here was the thing: she wasn't really a huge fan of comic books. She was more into anime and video games and manga, but she never really got into that comic book side of things. Well, one night, me and my friends were going out, her included, and I was just being my usual crazy self. And everybody started going, yeah, why do we like you anyway? Why do we hang out with a jerk like you? And she actually said something that struck me. Even to this day, she told me that, well, I like him. He's cool. I like him because of how passionate about comic books he was. And that honestly struck a bit of a chord with me because I knew she wasn't a comic book fan. I think even to this day, she isn't anything beyond a casual fan or anything. But the fact that she liked how passionate I was about this particular subject, that apparently struck enough of a chord with her. And for me, what that tells me is that if you can bring that level of importance to something, it could actually be uh, a vehicle for making conversations flow a lot more smoothly. And here's the thing with her, she started sharing more about what she liked. She started sharing more about K-pop, which she was really, really into at the time. She started sharing more about Korean culture, which she really, really enjoyed at the time. And you know what? I think that's why we became pretty good friends while we were in college. So, how do you get a good conversational hook? Talk about something that emotionally engages you. Talk about something that is a big deal and make it sound like a big deal, which should be easy enough already for you. Now, are there some extra considerations? Of course, for one, I wouldn't do what I did at the beginning, talking about something that emotionally engaged me in a negative way. Sure, that gets a conversation going. Sure, that gets you attention, but it's not always the best kind of attention. So I would definitely recommend that you talk about something that emotionally engages you in a positive manner, like how I talked about comic books with my friend. Now, there are a bunch of other things that you need to be aware of in order to keep the conversation going in a smooth and easy manner that, well, makes it good for both you and the person you're talking to. But if you're having trouble taking that first step into making sure the conversation is something that both of you can be actively engaged in, talk about something that makes you excited. But those are just my 2 cents on the issues, and really, there are so many ways of getting people hooked onto a conversation. If you have your own ways, feel free to share them in the comments down below. Or if you've actually tried this method before, tell us a story about how that experience went for you. I'd be really interested in hearing about it. Anyway, that's all I've got time for. Catch you guys later.